Amateur Traveler is in its 20th year now, but can you imagine if I had people on the show who had never been to the destination, but had just read about it or seen a movie about it? That wouldn't make any sense at all, and you wouldn't listen. We all know how important it is to receive advice from people who know a destination to get the most authentic local experience. And a great option for experiencing this is Explore Worldwide and their authentic small group adventures, led by local tour leaders, perfect for solo travelers who want to meet like minded people with a desire for adventure. I'm often an independent traveler, but two of my last three trips were with small group tours because they organize everything and it's a lot easier. If you want to recreate the tour I did to Malta, they have a Malta and Gozo Discovery Tour. I'm intrigued by one of their tours called A Taste of Sicily. The company again is Explore Worldwide, and visit exploreworldwide.com to learn more. And thanks to Explore Worldwide for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler. The nights are long, the days are short, and the weather is chilly to downright cold, depending on where you are. It's a good time to slip into a Quince iconic Mongolian cashmere sweaters, which start at only $50. You can treat yourself to everyday luxury at an affordable price with Quince. If you really want to dive into luxury, you can check out their leather handbags, washable silk shirts, and European linen sheet sets. Whatever you're looking for at Quince, all the prices are 50 to 80% less than similar brands, and they do that by partnering directly with top factories and cutting out the middleman. They only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes. And of course, they use premium fabrics and finishes for that luxury feel in every piece. But you've already heard me rave about my Quince travel pants. Treat yourself this winter without the luxury price tag. Go to quince.com/traveler for 365-day returns plus free shipping on your order. That's QUINCE.com/traveler to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/traveler. And thanks to Quince for sponsoring this episode of Amateur Traveler.
Got my bags packed, I'm on a roll. I'm heading out there and I'm ready to go. I'm looking real good in my passport photo. Oh, no.
Amateur Traveler, episode 190. Today, the Amateur Traveler is going to take that summer sunshine and put it to good use in California's wine country, the Napa Valley. Welcome to the Amateur Traveler. I'm your host, Chris Christensen. Before we get into today's interview, I do have some news stories for you. The first one is probably one of the most disturbing travel stories I have ever heard, and that is that a Russian luxury yacht company is offering cruises where you can pay $6,000 US to hunt Somali pirates. So as I understand this, you're paying for the privilege of hunting people. Does that bother anybody else? The second news story is somewhat less creepy. Naples is doing an interesting campaign where they're getting help for tourists from ex-convicts. The ex-convicts will help them cross streets in the hair-raising traffic, offer information, and even escort them through the city's more dangerous alleyways. I don't see how this could possibly go bad. And then the final story, a new airline is launching that is only for pets. Pet Airways will only take you if you are a four-legged creature. It'll operate between several large U.S. cities, and initial one-way fares are $149. Details about those stories, as well as the shutting down of the Clear program, tourists flocking to see Philippine inmates performing Michael Jackson tributes, and a mathematical cure for jet lag can be found in the show notes at amateurtraveler.com. I'd like to welcome to the show Carol Terwilliger Myers, who is the author of Weekend Adventures in San Francisco and Northern California, and we've invited Carol to come on and talk about the wine country north of San Francisco. Carol, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure for me, too. The wine country is certainly someplace I've been. It's only an hour or so from where I live, but I really wanted somebody who had a little more expertise, who had a little more knowledge about it. And when I say the wine country and California, that is increasingly an inaccurate term because we grow grapes for wine all over the place here. So where do you think of when I talk about the wine country north of San Francisco?
It's true. It really is spreading out. I think most people think of Sonoma and Napa probably first.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the accurate description when you say it like that as the wine country. But there's vineyards and wineries all over the place.
Okay. And why would somebody go to that area, and what should they do?
Well, I think that Napa is probably the place most people have heard about, and so if you've never been up here before, that's probably where you want to start.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things to keep in mind if you're visiting Napa is the town of Napa is different from the Napa Valley.
Right.
The town of Napa is more like a portal into the valley, and the town is doing a lot of building right now to put in hotels and restaurants and all kinds of things to make it more visitor friendly. So it's becoming a nicer place to stay at this point, and there's more things to do there. And there are plenty of wineries around Napa. But most people find themselves on Highway 29 going through into the Napa Valley on up to St. Helena and Calistoga.
Mm-hmm.
That's one section of the wine country, and then the other section is the Sonoma area, which is just to the west of that, not that far away. And it would be easy as a visitor spending the night to come and do one part of the wine country one day and another part another day. Those of us that live in the area can easily go there just in a day and back again. So it's possible to spend the night in San Francisco and just go to the wine country for a day.
Right. Yeah. So we talk about this as both a destination and also as a possible side trip, for instance, from a visit from San Francisco.
Right. It would work in both of those ways. And I would like to tell people about a nice little area sort of at the end of the Napa Valley, Calistoga area, which is kind of a nice spot to center on. And I think it's a good idea when you're going to the wine country to not try to do too much, to kind of focus on one area, see that, and just do enough to not overwhelm yourself, and then another day go for another area.
Now, you're suggesting that I don't drive up there and have a glass of wine at every single winery there in the Napa Valley?
Definitely.
How many wineries are there in the Napa Valley right now? Do you have any idea?
Well, that's a good question, and I can't answer that authoritatively, but lots and lots and lots, hundreds. I mean, there's a lot of wineries. And every time I revise my book, there's more, and what really is shocking is that so many of them are really special and really enjoyable to visit.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that every time I go, I discover another one or two wineries that I can't believe there's really that many more nice ones. Each one is unique. A lot of them have really special things that they offer besides the wine.
Mm-hmm.
And so it can be kind of like entering a little world when you go to one as opposed to another.
So you were recommending Calistoga as a particular destination?
Yeah, I thought it would be a good one to talk about because there's other things to do in Calistoga too. And it would be easy enough to go through Highway 29 and do a few stops along the way, ending at Calistoga, and then even drive back. But I think it would be nice to stay there and spend a little time in Calistoga. And what I want to tell everybody about that I discovered recently is the Castello the Amorosa Winery, which opened, I think it was in the last 2 years. It's a castle winery.
Oh, okay.
And this is an amazing thing to see because it's an authentically replicated 12th century medieval Italian castle. And the winemaker that did this is Daryl Satui, and I guess he'd been wanting to do something like this for a long time. He'd been wanting to bring a castle to the wine country, and so he finally just did it. And it's this major thing that has been plunked down there. I think it's just north of St. Helena and just outside of Calistoga. Quite a sight to see. You can take tours of it, and then you can taste wine in the subterranean barrel room with all these vaulted ceilings and everything. And it even has a dungeon, but you won't be tasting in there. So there's things like this to discover and spend a little time at. And one of the things that's nice, I think, is to plan maybe 2 wineries a day, possibly 3. Any more is really pushing it if you want to really have an experience, and also it's pushing it as far as having too much to drink. You do need a designated driver for this excursion. That's something to keep in mind. But anyway, I find that like 2, 3, possibly 4 wineries, if it's a very small one, you can get in a day. And if you do more than that, you find yourself just sort of driving up the driveway, running in, doing a little tasting, getting back in the car and running out, and then going into the traffic and trying to get to the next one. So it's kind of nice to stay a little while when you get there.
Well, and in terms of doing tasting, most of the wineries now do have a charge for tasting.
That's true.
I don't know if there are exceptions to that I should know about.
There are a few exceptions, but what I found when I was working on this edition of the book is that almost all of them are charging between $5 and $10 for tasting. And it can go up to $20 if they're more library-type wines, really special wines. Some of the wineries will give you a credit towards purchase.
Right.
So if you taste and decide to buy some wine, you get the credit towards purchase, which I think is really a generous thing. Some of them will let you keep the wine glass.
Oh, that's nice. I hadn't seen that. Okay.
Yeah, and some of them will throw in a tour. I mean, they have different things that they will do. And I found that they changed their mind a lot on this. So one of the best ways to find out what's going on is to check out their website before you go. Dance around in it a little bit and see what you can find out. Some of them are very hard to understand, but a lot of them are straightforward. One of the things to look for when you go to that website is what kind of tours they have, and look for a coupon. A lot of the wineries have a discount coupon at their website. In fact, sometimes it's not even just a discount, it's a free tasting. You can print out 2 or 3 or however many people are in your party, and everyone can taste free. So that's my money-saving tip of the day. That is just really good news to know. So always check out ahead of time on that.
And then it seems like on average, you're going to be tasting around half a dozen wines or less. Is that about right?
You mean at each winery?
You would be offered with a tasting half a dozen wines.
It's usually about 4 to 6, and sometimes there is more, but it's in that range. Often when it's free, it's like approximately 4 wines.
Okay.
And there is still free tasting, but it is hard to find.
I'm assuming it's not necessarily the wineries with the better wine that are doing the free tasting.
I can't say it's one or the other.
Okay.
I think they started charging, though. A lot of the wineries started charging because they felt a lot of people were coming to the wineries just to get drunk. And I think the wineries that had the more expensive wines and the finer wines really didn't like that, of course, you can imagine. And so they started charging to kind of get a more serious clientele. And I guess it's working. As far as I can tell, it's working.
Okay.
So that's what was behind that.
And then you had mentioned, again, Calistoga as a destination. The Castle Winery then is in Calistoga?
Yes, it is. It's on the sort of on the outskirts of town, just between St. Helena and Calistoga. And another winery I should tell you about there that is free tasting, at least the last time I went it was free tasting, is the Frank Family Vineyards. And that's kind of an interesting place because it's built on an old winery site, a historic site for the Larkmead Winery. It used to be years and years ago. So now it's on the National Register of Historic Places. And they have a beautiful stone barn-like building there where they used to do some tasting. Now I think they just do more special events in there, but you can still go in and take a peek. And they have a couple newer buildings where they do tasting. And this winery is kind of interesting because it has a Hollywood connection. They have a room with some photos and information about Marilyn Monroe, who had visited there. I think one of the owners had won an Oscar a while back. I don't think they show that anymore, but I think there's a Hollywood connection that way. And I think also one of the current owners still works in Hollywood. So that's the Hollywood Connection Winery. They have the free tasting and very nice wines, really nice red wines there. So that's just two in Calistoga. There's a lot more, of course. Another one that is in the same area, if we're going to center on Calistoga, is Schramsberg, which is also particularly nice because it is a champagne maker. They make champagne there. So you can go through the caves, and they have a wonderful tour, and you'll learn about the Riddler, who is the person who turns the bottles. They have to do it every day, turn all the bottles. So that's kind of a fun thing to see. And they do have caves into the mountains. So a particularly nice thing to do on a warm day. And they do get warm days in the wine country.
Oh, yes, quite. One of the things that I'd have to say is you mentioned tours, and I have found that at a champagnerie, or for our French listeners, someone who makes a sparkling wine in the méthode champenoise, to be politically correct, because I know that for some it has to be made in the Champagne region of France to be champagne.
That's true. That's true.
That tour is particularly interesting with all of that goes into making a champagne. Is very interesting.
Yeah, and actually that would make an interesting kind of tour for you to set up for your itinerary to do a few different wineries like this, one of them making champagne. There are a number of wineries that do make champagnes in that area in the Napa Valley.
As you researched the last edition of this book, I think you're on the 9th edition, as I recall.
That's right.
What was the biggest surprise?
You mean in general or about the wine country?
Well, the wine country, sorry.
The biggest surprise. I guess that there's still so many wineries continuing to open up, and that they tend to be of such good quality, and that there are so many lodgings opening up. There's a lot of new lodgings in the area. That, I guess, surprised me that it continues to grow. In some ways, I shouldn't be surprised because it's such a popular place that enough visitors go there to support that. But still, I'm always kind of surprised when I go there and see it getting more and more built up. Yet one other thing that is a little surprising, too, is that it doesn't feel so built up. You know what I mean? It still maintains that kind of green, spread-out picnic place type feeling.
Right.
You can still find a place to plunk down a blanket and have a nice picnic.
And is there some place you would recommend getting our picnic supplies, or?
Oh, well, they have quite a few places where you can get picnic supplies. I think St. Helena is a nice little town, and that's close to what we were talking about, too, with Calistoga. St. Helena has, well, they have so many things there, but as far as getting a picnic, the Model Bakery is a good spot. It's been around since the 20s, I think, and they have all kinds of breads they make from scratch every day, and you can just pick up a mini pizza or something like that, and some cookies. Great place to go. And there's also another kind of interesting place, the Napa Valley Olive Oil Manufacturing Company.
Oh,
and
right.
That is one that has been around for a long time, too. They operate out of an old barn. It's kind of a mishmash of a bunch of barrels holding pasta and all kinds of things. And you can just sort of go in there and pick a few things for a picnic. And they have a picnic area outside. You can just go ahead and have your picnic right there. Oh, and also they have a branch of Dean and DeLuca in St. Helena, and that's the famous deli from New York City. That's kind of an emporium of all kinds of deli goodies, and I mean, they have everything there. That would be one-stop shopping to go there. But they have also so many restaurants. One of the biggest problems is deciding where to go. Doesn't hurt to have a plan ahead of time. A place I discovered recently that you wouldn't think would be such a great place to go to in the wine country is one that has wonderful hot dogs and hamburgers. It's called Taylor's Automatic Refresher. And this is like an old A&W type place where you go in and you get your hot dog and your soda or whatever, and they don't do car service there, but they have a huge lawn out in the back where people go and sit. This is a great place for families in particular. But I actually was in the mood to have a hot dog when we went there. I had been to the wine country for a very nice day of eating all kinds of goodies, and this was just kind of a nice way to top it off. So if you're in that kind of mood, you can have a hot dog or hamburger before you head home.
All right.
Whatever you want, it's there.
You mentioned that this would be a good place to go with families. Sometimes the wine country isn't as accessible with families because taking the kids to the wine tasting doesn't work out quite as well. Are there other things that you would do in that area that work well with families?
Yeah, there's lots to do in the wine country with kids, actually. Mine are grown now, but I went through all the younger years with them, and we certainly took them enough. Sonoma has a wonderful little train ride. I think they even have a Ferris wheel there now, a little one. So that's a kind of a nice thing to think about if you're going that direction. But over towards Calistoga, again, in that small area, you'll find the Old Faithful Geyser, which is kind of something people aren't expecting to find there. This is one of 3 geysers in the world that have the name Old Faithful.
Right.
It goes off very regularly. I think it's every hour. And the other 2, of course, are at Yellowstone. And then somebody was asking me the other night, and I'd forgotten, but the other one is in New Zealand, the other Old Faithful. So that's a great little excursion with kids. And a lot of the wineries will pour like maybe apple juice or grape juice for the kids, or something. And usually you can buy something, and they often will have cold water or something like that. So you can usually entertain the kids with something while you're tasting. Another thing I want to mention that's also in Calistoga is the Petrified Forest, which is another one of those kind of offbeat little attractions, again, that works really well with kids. A nice place to go in the afternoon when it's hot because there's lots of shade trees there. And also, just for everybody, it's of interest because it's petrified redwood trees that they have there, which you don't find just everywhere.
Oh, I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. That area in particular is just kind of nice and lazy to take little walks, and there's several parks around there and pools and things like that. So if you're traveling with kids, I would recommend that you're spending the night in particular, you want to stay somewhere maybe where they have a pool. And you know what we forgot to talk about that's also in Calistoga, in addition to all the wonderful wine, is mud baths.
Right.
That's another great thing. After you've had all that wonderful wine, you can have a nice mud bath and pull out all the impurities from your body.
Okay.
So
we talked about getting around. This is predominantly driving. Are there other options besides the driving and the designated driver?
it is pretty much, you want to have your own car, I think, for this. I'm sure there's probably some tours with buses and things, but it's much nicer to go in your own car. One thing, though, that you can do and look into if you're interested is there are quite a few limo tours. And that would be something that you could do maybe with some other people. You can usually fit quite a few people in a limo, and they'll take you around to the different wineries, and then you don't have to worry about how many you go to. You can have a nice time. Some of these limo tours will include lunch and other things too, as far as like maybe stopping at a shopping area or something. Maybe most of them will let you choose what you want to do. Another thing that was occurring to me as far as other modes of transportation is the wine train. There is something called the wine train. It doesn't take you through the whole valley. It takes you on a specific route. And at one point, they didn't stop at any wineries. I
know that was very unpopular when they did that, yeah.
Yes. Well, I heard they are now stopping at wineries, but I can't give you the absolute current thing on that, on what exactly they're doing, because they do change that here and there. But that would be something to find out. Do they stop at wineries or not at this point? But I have to tell you, I took the wine train once when they weren't stopping at wineries, and I really enjoyed it. I took my elderly mother along, and this is a good thing to do with older people. And she just loved it because we got to see all the scenery. We were on a train. They served wine while we were on the train, and we had a lovely lunch. So it worked out really well. But I do think that if somebody has a limited time in the wine country and they have not been there before, I think you want to see the wineries. The wine train is great as an excursion or part of a trip, but I personally wouldn't want to have it be the whole trip.
Right. So we are doing our picnic lunch at lunchtime, or we're getting our hot dog and hamburger. Where would you go at night?
Oh, at night?
For a fancy restaurant. Maybe something expensive and then something inexpensive.
Well, we talked about the Taylor's Refresher, which is surely the inexpensive one. You know what they have in this area that is really nice is the Culinary Institute of America at Greystone, which is a mouthful. But that's in St. Helena. You asked about night in particular. I'm pretty sure they serve dinner there, but I have been there mostly a couple times at lunch. And this is in an old winery building. It used to be the Christian Brothers long ago. Some people may remember it. It's always been a spectacular building there, but now they have an actual Culinary Institute there. And you can go in for dinner, and it's a fabulous place, and it's student chefs that are working there. So they're running around, and you're getting the fruits of their learning labors. One of the other things that you can do there is, I don't know if they do this at night, but they do have cooking classes also, which are really kind of fun. And they're just like short ones, like a couple hours or so. You get to watch something being made and taste it and everything. They're not usually participation classes.
Okay.
Another restaurant I have to tell you about there that's one of my favorites is Travinia, and that's right on Highway 29. And this is another older restaurant. It's in a huge stone building, a really beautiful old stone building. It's kind of like pastas and California cuisine and that sort of thing, but just the most wonderful atmosphere, a wonderful place to go. Next door to Maryville Vineyards, which if you are there at the right time, you can go there and do some tasting too. The wine country is absolutely just full of good restaurants. It's really it's hard to decide where to go with all the choices. Another one in that same area in St. Helena is Martini House, which is a relatively new kid on the block, but again, a really nice place in an old house that's been renovated with a huge lawn and trees. And again, at night, this would be really wonderful in the summertime outdoors. A lot of these places are particularly nice outdoors and in the summer when it's warm at night. Often just year-round during the daytime, it can be pretty pleasant there as far as weather goes.
Who's the most memorable person you've met in the Napa Valley?
Probably, I would say Daryl Satui, who has the Castle Winery.
Okay.
Because I got to take a tour with him through that winery. He was very interesting in his love of what he's doing. He's an all-around interesting guy. Has several wineries, and then just to build a castle from scratch like that, you have to admire that.
And then your book covers a number of different places to stay, I think you said. Anything that stands out for you, particularly interesting, unique, cheap, for whatever reason, really stands out as an interesting place to stay?
Again, an overwhelming variety of places to stay, but one of the places I enjoyed recently that I went to was a little B&B called the Chanrick Inn, and that was in Calistoga, and that's a Victorian that has been renovated, so it looks old on the outside. It's beautiful and sleek and modern on the inside. It has a wonderful pool area out back and a hot tub. The owner is a chef who's quite skilled, and he makes just a wonderful brunch every morning for his guests. That was quite nice. Also, though, in that area, another place that is very nice to stay too, but it would be with the mud bath, one of the mud bath places, the Indian Springs. I think I would recommend that one. It's got like little cottages and that sort of thing, and that permits you to have your mud bath and just sort of walk back to your room very easily. And some of these places, actually, you can go to a few of the wineries by walking from them. So that's nice too. Yeah, those are the ones that are coming to mind, but I'll tell you, there's so many of them I could go on and on and on.
Well, we'll certainly recommend that people pick up a copy of The Weekend Adventures in San Francisco and Northern California, so we'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Right.
As we go to wind this down, 3 questions. The first one thing you should know and one thing you should pack before you go to the Napa Valley.
Well, I think we covered a lot of the things about one thing you should know, and the thing that I would mention again is getting that coupon, that free tasting coupon at the website. That's one thing to remember. As far as what you bring, maybe, I was going to say a wine opener, but they're easy to get, but often when you need them, you don't have them, so I'd bring a wine opener, and then maybe buy another one while I'm there.
And then finish this sentence for me. You really know you're in the Napa Valley when what?
When the wine starts to flow.
That'd be a lazy fastball right across the middle of the plate, I think.
Yeah, that was an easy one. Oh, yeah, actually, that's it. It's all about the wine, and so, of course, you want to enjoy that, and there's plenty of it.
Okay. And then the final question. What 3 words would you use to describe the Napa Valley?
Beautiful. Hot.
Right. Good people know that, yeah.
And The third one. Varied, with lots of different things to do.
Okay.
Not boring.
Carol, thank you so much for coming on the show. Again, our guest has been Carol Terwilliger Myers, the author of The Weekend Adventures in San Francisco and Northern California. Thanks for coming on the show.
My pleasure.
I would normally offer you an internet resource at this point, but I'm going to try and minimize my talking because if you couldn't tell from the introduction or from this part, I picked up a cold while I was in Mexico. The interview was recorded a couple weeks earlier before that, so that doesn't have that same problem. I know I won't be getting any sympathy from you because I was on that trip to Cozumel that was paid for by Royal Holiday to look at the Royal Park Resort in Cozumel. It was a wonderful trip. I have been blogging about it, about Cozumel as well as about the resort. Had a wonderful time there. And certainly if you'd like to know more about that, probably the best way would be check out the blogs, and I'll be doing some videos also of that. For those of you who are watching the enhanced version, I will put in some pictures here of both the resort and of Cozumel. Probably the biggest surprise to me is how close to the United States in terms of culturally Cozumel is, because it is more of a tourist town. It is more accessible. It's also not a deep dive culturally, so that's good or bad, depending on what you're looking for. And also the low crime. That was something that I didn't realize. I knew it didn't have the problems they're having in Juarez, but I wasn't picturing people saying, oh yeah, they went to pick up a rental car and they were told it's just sitting on such and such a block. It's a blue Jeep and the keys are in it. So that was a pleasant surprise. Wonderful trip, except for this cold that I picked up. And I think with that, I'm going to leave this show because I don't want to do a lot of extra talking, even though I have a lot of community correspondence to catch up on. I am looking for people who are interested in meeting up with me in Chicago. It does look like we're going to do that either the last Friday or Saturday of the month. So if you're interested in that, please drop me an email at host@amateurtraveler.com or ping me on Twitter. And I want to start to get some preferences on the date, and then we'll put out an announcement when that's going to be, probably on upcoming.org. With that, we'll wind this show down so you don't have to listen to this voice anymore, and I don't have to talk anymore. You can reach me by leaving a comment here at amateurtraveler.com. You can send me an email at host@amateurtraveler.com. You can catch me on Twitter again at twitter.com/Chris2X. And as always, thanks so much for listening.